Hello and welcome to Ditching Hourly. I'm Jonathan Stark. My guest today is founder and design director at Mellor & Smith, Paul Mellor. Mellor & Smith is a brand and ad agency whose motto is, "We get our clients noticed." Paul just told me before the show that he is a professional loudmouth. So I'm looking forward to having a conversation about getting people noticed. Paul, welcome to the show.
Cheers, man. I don't really know what to say after being introed as a loudmouth, but yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
So it's not too loud so far. So maybe you could talk, for folks who are not familiar with the agency, maybe you could talk a little bit about the agency and yourself, just to kind of set the context.
Yeah. So I started Mellor & Smith 10 and a half years ago, which is quite unusual to have an agency that's still going after 10 and a half years, because generally one or two things happen. Either they've gone bust by now, or they've been bought by one of the big groups, one of the big advertising networks, and Martin Sorrell. So we're quite unusual already, but our history is built on a clearly defined positioning, which is we get people noticed, we get brands noticed, and that's a very difficult thing to do. It's so difficult that most marketeers don't do it. Most agencies pay lip service to it. They certainly talk a good game, but don't actually deliver. I'm not really one for stats and research, but the one piece that backs that up is the average Londoner, and this is the same for New York or any big urban centre. The average Londoner sees 1,000 ads a day. And of those 1,000 ads, so that'd be radio, TV, print, digital, whatever it may well be, mobile. So of those 1,000 ads, 89% of them are immediately forgotten. And that's because they're rubbish.
Yeah.
Of those remaining 11, only 4% are remembered positively. I mean, I'd rather be remembered negatively. Ad agencies, marketing agencies don't practice what they preach. They're all vanilla and they're all the same. Yet they say they're not, and that's where we've carved a positioning, and it's very it's closely held positioning that breaks us out from the crowd, and we're 180 degrees different to the vast majority, if not almost all, of the ad agencies, certainly in the UK, across the world.
Yeah, I can't think of one ad that I've seen. I can't think of one ad.
Yeah. Well, there we go.
I can't remember one. I mean, the only ad that I can remember is from years ago, like Dollar Shave Club or something like that.
Yeah. Which of course wasn't made as an ad. It was made as an investor video. That was when the guy that started Dollar Shave Club was looking for investors. So he thought, well, I'll make a video to drum up support. It wasn't even made as an ad. I mean, it's the one ad that you can recall. I mean, it is actually an ad now, but it wasn't when it started out. So, yeah, it's absolute dire straits. I mean, I was in the US last week. I was shooting for a client in Chicago. I was watching the TV, and they're rubbish. They're just as rubbish as they are in the UK. It's such small amounts of good work being produced for clients. Yet you wouldn't think that if you heard, the investor calls or the interviews done by either marketing agencies, ad agencies, whatever, design agencies, whatever they may well be.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so this is almost happening on two levels. So you do this sort of thing for your clients, but also, of course, you're going to dog food it and do it for yourself and actually walk the walk. Whatever the talk is, you're going to walk it. So for my listeners, many of them find themselves in a situation where their clients or prospective clients cannot really tell the difference between, one software developer and another software developer, or one copywriter and another copywriter. They just, they're like, what's your hourly rate? And then they think they're comparing apples to apples between two different, firms or two different contractors by this hourly rate, and like, oh, well, geez, 150 seems kind of high. We're going to go with someone who's 110. And they're just totally undifferentiated they think they're different from each other. They can see the differences from each other, but their clients, there's no meaningful difference to the client, but from one to the other. So if you were going to approach, someone who had a small firm, maybe like I say small, I don't know how many people you have, it's probably a big firm.
So we're 10. No, we're 10. We're purposely very small. It fills me with horror trying to run a big agency. I want to be small, which again is different to everybody else.
Sure. So where does someone get an idea first for how they would stand out from what look like undifferentiated competitors?
Well, I think the first thing that nobody ever really considers is the work. So we can talk about positioning in a minute, I'm sure we will. But your service, your work, is one of the biggest differentiators between you and somebody else. So if you're fucking good, then that's going to differentiate you from somebody that's average. So immediately it puts you up on the A game, level of people, of players. If you're mixing around with the B's and the C's, then you're gonna struggle.
What do you mean good? How do you measure good?
I mean, ball-breakingly good, where someone sees it and they think, shit, that is good. That is really good. I'm going to remember how good that piece of work was. World class.
Okay.
And people can concentrate, they concentrate on branding and positioning, and they don't do a particularly good job, but they do all of those things and they don't concentrate on the work. And it doesn't have to be client work. It can be self-starting projects. It can be, there's a big buzz at the moment in London around what we call side hustles, so side projects. It can be anything. It doesn't have to be the work that you're paid for. Now, I think it's better if it is. But things that are self-starting work can be just as powerful as client work. But getting in front of and doing work for big brands where you do really good work, that is going to differentiate you immediately. That is the first thing to say before you go into positioning. It actually feeds into your positioning, because the more confident you are in your service and your proposition, then you will then feed into your proposition.
Okay.
And I think by extension, again, your billing. This idea that everyone should be charging the same, an egalitarian approach. No, look, if you're good, you should charge more. If you're world class, you should charge even more than that.
So here's the tricky part, though. I'm sure you see this in your industry, where people, ad agencies or marketers, they think they're good because they're winning awards, but their stuff's actually really boring, or not effective, I should say.
Yeah, fuck awards. Honestly, I have no time for awards. It's just a backslapping old boys club of people giving awards to their mates. I think people are starting to realize the incestuousness of awards, really, and it happens across every industry. If you sponsor an award, then you get given one. If you buy 2 tables at the gala dinner, then you win an award. It's pretty incestuous, right? Mm-hmm. And I think people in various industries are waking up to that fact if they don't know that already. So I'm not talking about awards. I'm talking about work where you go, you see it and you recognize it. If it's software developers, it's working on things that are outwardly facing. So if you're a software developer, don't just work on some back end stuff that never gets seen. Go and work for a games developer, where you can then talk about the games that you worked on that people might see. Mm-hmm. If you're front end, then work on something that's a really high profile web project, or develop a new piece of technology, or hack something. Right. Just do something that gets you noticed, that people go, shit, I recognize that. I saw that in the news 2 months ago, 6 months ago, whatever it is. Mm-hmm. That is the number one way of differentiating yourself, is to be really, really good at what you do.
Right. So, yeah, I just wanted to tease that out a little bit, because everyone listening thinks they're really good. But the thing that they think they're really good at is invisible. It's like this, oh, my code is so elegant and I'm so clever. And I'm sure your code is elegant and you are clever, and that's great, but nobody can see that. And it's not a differentiator. So, and to give a software example, think of John Resig, who created jQuery as an open source thing. He basically is famous in our world because he created this open source JavaScript library. And and that's me dating myself, because that's been a long time now. But you can start an open source repo, just like Paul's suggesting. Yeah. Do something amazing. You could do work for name. If somebody came to me and I needed API work done, and they were like, oh yeah, I worked on real time communications at Slack, I'd be like, okay, you win. Like, okay, let's do this. Well, how much is it going to cost me? I talked to a designer one time who designed the like button on Facebook. Like, big deal. It's the like button, but it's used by billions of people. So it's kind of like, okay, that's special. It makes you go, oh, cool. That's remarkable. And it's good. And it's good. I mean, it works, I guess, so, okay, great. I just wanted
and the fact that the proof there is that you can remember those.
Yeah, exactly.
How many developers have you spoken to over the last 10 years? Fucking loads, I should imagine.
Yeah.
And you can recall, the person that was, at the API at Slack, or the person that it was the graphic designer for the like button on Facebook. Like that's the proof of this.
Yeah, they've got street cred.
Yeah.
All right, cool. So once someone does, they're doing good work, they're landing big gigs. Maybe they've got this side hustle where they don't need anybody's permission and they can create this amazing library or plugin or framework or whatever it might be, and give it away free and be the guy that did that or the gal that did that. After that, is that just you just keep talking about that or keep trying to do more of that? Where does the sort of, I feel like
where does the path lead?
Yeah, where does it go after that? It seems like because from and maybe it's different because you have a different, your business is in a different kind of industry, but you stand for something, you have a particular, your kind of, I don't want to say mission, but your value proposition is articulated very clearly, like will get you noticed. You could say 1,000 other things, but you picked that thing and you stick with it. So what does that look like for a company? How does that make things better?
Okay, so once you're producing world-class talent, then I think it gives you the right to think about how you can stand for something. And I think, largely speaking, whilst you're in that process, you start to stand for something. It starts to happen by sort of, natural selection. You're right. So Mellor and Smith, my agency, we stand for, we get you noticed. It's as simple as that. It's very, very simple. It's not couched in, caveated out. It's very, very simple, easy to remember, and there's a clear benefit to the end user. So my clients are, it sounds very big-headed, but we work with some of the biggest brands in the world and some of the smallest. So some of the ones you'd have heard of, we work with Amazon, work with AWS, we work with Expedia, recently started working with Spotify. Like there are some big brands, and then we work with some tiny brands, startups, charities, hustlers, whatever it is. We work with we generally work with massive and small. We do work with some in the middle, but they largely, just don't fancy it really.
That's really interesting. Why do you think that is?
So I have a theory that the people that have grown a business, and these might be the original founders, or it might be a publicly traded company. People that are in the 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th position in a market share. They talk a good game, but they don't actually really fancy it. They just want to, maintain the status quo, and they they don't want to get the sack. The marketing director of those businesses, the CMO, the VP of marketing, which is generally our client. They're interested in maintaining their standard of living. They might, the kids are in private school. They've got a second house, a holiday home. They don't want to lose these things, and so it's just too much to risk. And then the people we work with are, they're people that understand that they have to stand out. They have to be memorable to win. To grow market share, to grow their business, and to take on the competition. Then the little guys, the ones we work with, understand that they have to roll the dice. They have nothing going for them because they're the new they're new entrant to the market. Nobody's heard about them. They have no credibility. They have no history. So they have to break the rules to get noticed, and that's how they'll then grow their market share. And you see industries being turned upside down by some of those. There's a hell of a lot of startups out there that are fucking terrible, and they think that because they developed a nice little piece of software or a nice little app, that's enough, and that's about 10% of the work. The other 90% of the work is telling as many fucking people as possible about your product, not finessing the product that you've come up with.
Got it.
And
Yep.
that's probably not what your listeners want to hear. They're like, no, I want the perfect product, the perfect product.
Right.
No, get it good, and then get it out there and smash as many people in the face as possible with your message. And now, that's, you then, it's a work in progress, becoming world class. Like I said at the start, you got to you don't become world class overnight. You got to work at it really hard. It takes a long time. These are crafts to learn. You learn your trade.
Sure. Yeah, and most folks that I work with who are still in that learning phase where they're kind of new or they're intermediate and they're not, they're still in love with the craft. They're actually usually pretty happy because they just bill by the hour. They're happy to get paid by the hour to get to, write React apps or whatever the thing is that they love. When it starts to really hurt is when you get sick of that. And you're like, man, I can't write another one of these things. And then you start looking at your annual income and it hasn't really gone up in 5 years. And your skill that you loved is maybe not so fresh anymore. And there's a bunch of new kids doing it for pizza. And, it starts to get a little scary. And then they think like, it's time to do something about this. So those are the folks who, I think they're good. They know what they're doing. They usually, when they get to this point that I'm describing, they definitely know what they're doing. They might not have any outwardly visible, world-class evidence, but some of them do. So as they're getting to that point and, you're sort of suggesting, and I agree with you that you'll start to develop this point of view. You'll have some kind of thing that you stand for or a motto or something that's kind of bubbling around because you've been doing this for 5-10 years and you know what's up. At least the competitive landscape of what you're dealing with. You might not be super great at understanding who your clients are, or like we can build Rails apps for anybody, and that kind of thing. So how does that, if you were going to sit down with somebody like I just described, what would you?
What do they do? What do I do? First of all, don't look at what the competition is doing. Don't do anything based on what the competition is doing. You should be looking at what you want to stand for. Then when you start to develop it, so you should be looking at what do I stand for? What do I actually stand for? What is it that is unique about me? What are the defining moments or the threads that run through all of my best work? What is it that I actually believe in? What am I pissed off about? What do I absolutely love? Those are the things that they should be thinking about. That will then start to formulate some ideas or an idea. And then you look at the marketplace, and you'd like to think that puts you in direct. It puts you directly opposite everybody else. Largely speaking, in most industries, everyone is couched around one area, one sort of positioning. Very few is it spread. Very few industries is it spread. Most industries, they're couched around one sort of area of positioning, and then you should be the complete opposite to that. Yep. Now, hopefully, what you believe in and what pisses you off and what you're fucking good at will take you to that place. If it doesn't, then you have to think again about how you would move into that space. But it has to be true for me. I think people can spot a bullshitter a mile off.
Yeah.
And I think if you fundamentally believe in what it is that you stand for, then they're far likelier to believe when believe you when you say it. Mm-hmm. And that will take you to the direct opposite to everybody else, which is exactly where you need to be. And It's exactly why no fucker goes over there, because it's really scary because you're the only person over there. Yeah. But you're immediately memorable. You're immediately differentiated from everybody else.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I suppose it goes back to just evolutionary DNA. Like, you don't want to stand apart from the herd because it's dangerous. But Seth Godin has this great point he makes in Icarus Deception about how people's comfort zone and people's security zone used to be overlapping 100%. Like, the things that made you safe were the things that made you comfortable, but now the safety zone has moved and the comfort zone is still where it was. So the things that make you comfortable no longer make you safe. And what you're describing is an example of that, where it feels dangerous to set yourself apart from the crowd because it used to be dangerous, literally. But now it's dangerous to not do that. It's dangerous for your business, at least. So I love that point. And so it's still people, I know people are listening like, yeah, but what's different about me? Or what do I just like swear like Paul? Is that what I need to do to be over there? Or like, you know, do they look at the work? They look at things, when you say things that piss them off, how would you, let's say I hate hourly billing. So how does that, not to put you on the spot and like have you do me, but what's the, you know what I mean?
Yeah, you're my muse. No, so immediately, you know, you stand out because you say, well, hourly billing sucks. It's stupid, right? So it's strong language. That's the first thing. So it immediately feels raw and honest. That's where that's that point. You have to believe in what you're saying. You don't have to swear. I mean, I swear quite a lot, and actually that causes problems because people, you know, new prospects will go, hey, Paul, I really like what you stand for, but I don't want you to create advertising that swears. That's cool, man. I'm not like a one-trick pony where, like, I just put the word "fuck" in your advertising. You know, like it's come on, let's have a bit more. So whilst it is a differentiator for us, it also causes problems, and we have to think about how we communicate that and how we bring that across. But, you know, our defining thing and our differentiator isn't that I swear. It's a contributing factor. It's something, you know, this is how I talk, not to my kids, but this is how I talk to, you know, in other parts of my life. And so people understand that this is the real me. This is the real Paul Mellor when they're talking to me. So, you know, you talking about hourly billing is nuts. You know, using that word, it's crazy. It's ridiculous. That's people understand. Yeah, he thinks like that. Now, I might not agree with you.
Right.
Some people might not agree with you, but they believe that you're being honest at that point. And that's where I think it becomes really powerful when you're the opposite to everybody else. That immediately gives you some credibility in terms of like, well, I actually stand for this because only a nutcase would do that, you know, if they didn't believe that was the case.
Right.
And then in the method of communication, the tone you use, the power, the emotion that you try to drive is when it comes through in its honesty. And if you couple that with world-class work, you're a long way along the road to standing out from the crowd, standing for something, being memorable, and to the point about the podcast, being far more likely to be able to change how you bill and how you get paid. Probably not just changing from a method, not just changing the method, but changing the value that you and other people put on your service. You aren't just selling time at that point, and that's clearly clearly your point in this. And I think they're all interlinked. You know, it gives you confidence to be able to say, well, hey, I'm worth this. This is my worth for me to do this job for you. Or this is, you know, take it one step further. This is how much this work is worth for you and your business,
right,
Mr. or Mrs. Customer. And, you know, there are some very smart people that have started to build like that, thinking about what's it worth to you, the end customer, the end client. Well, then that's how I'm going to decide how much I'm willing to charge. Right,
value-based pricing.
Yeah, and I think that's the and I'm going to bastardize this anecdote, but there's the anecdote of I'm pretty sure it's Picasso sat in a probably drunk because that's how he used to do all of his stuff, and that's why he's an absolute baller. But he was sat in a cafe. And he was sketching on a napkin, and there was a tourist. And I hesitate to say that it was an American tourist, but probably, maybe it was an American tourist. And and she said, "That's brilliant." Just he was about to leave. "Oh, can I have your napkin?" He's like, "Yeah, sure." It's 60,000 francs, let's say dollars, whatever it was. A large amount of money. She says, "That's crazy. That's just taking you 2 minutes, and it's on a napkin." He's like, "No, this has taken me 60 years. To hone my craft," and that's his value.
Right.
And with that, I think he put it in his pocket and walked off.
Yeah, exactly. There's a Miles Davis story. There's a lot of stories like that where it's like, it's not the time that it took to create the deliverable that matters. And honestly, I would say the 60 years doesn't matter either if it's garbage. So if you get both of those things, what matters is that it in a B2B situation, what matters is that the buyer is getting some value out of what you did, whatever the engagement was. They're glad they gave you all that money because it gave them some kind of result. So now in your case, the result is getting noticed, right? Like, so you would say so if I was a sales guy for you and somebody said, hey, we really want to work with Mellor and Smith. And I'd be like, all right, well, why would you go with somebody expensive like us? Why not just get somebody cheap? Why not just have your marketing department do it? Why not go with, some competitor? Why not get somebody on Fiverr? Why not, why do you even want to get noticed? Like, are you, like who cares? Like, why not just keep doing what you're doing? And I've never done this for you or for a question like that, but what you're offering
I'm going to sign you up. I'm going to get you selling for me.
But that's the thing that you need to, if you do want to value price and engagement, and that's not the only way to price and engagement, but if you did want to do that, in a case like Mellor and Smith, I would need to find out from a client why they want to get noticed. What do they think that's going to do for them? Like, big deal. They notice you. If you don't have anything for sale, that's not going to get you anything. What do you have for sale? What do you want them to notice? Have you been trying to get noticed for 6 years and it's not working? Or, what's the pain here that we're trying to solve? How are we going to measure it? How are you going to know that you're getting noticed? So you basically if you do want to value price, that's the kind of path you go down where they convince you that there's a good project here. And even though you're the one selling, technically, I tell people to act more like a doctor where, patient walks in, says, doc, I need a triple bypass. The doctor's not going to say, sure, jump up on the table. Let me get my scalpel. They're going to diagnose the situation. Maybe you don't need a triple bypass. Client comes to you. Maybe they don't need to get noticed. Maybe their product stinks. Yeah. Okay. So it's kind of looping back to the standing apart from the crowd and getting back to that concept. Let's say that someone is nervous about, like, they have an idea, but they don't really have the courage to embrace it and like go all in. I'm sure you must deal with this constantly where you got what you think is a killer idea. It solves the client's problem. It's going to get them noticed. And they're like, that's great, but can we just change this one thing? Like, that must happen, right?
Yeah. And my answer is no, it can't. You're paying for me and my advice. I don't tell my accountant how to do my accounts. Mm-hmm. So I don't tell engineers how to design, engineer bridges. Right. Yeah. There has to be a value placed on my skill. Mm-hmm. And it is valuable. Like, what we do for businesses and for brands is valuable. Now that does sound like I'm difficult to work with. Actually, I disagree. I think it makes me very easy to work with because it means that you know exactly where you stand.
Just do what I say. It's easy.
We have a sort of a 90-10 rule, and that is that 90% of businesses and brands won't want to work with us because we're not their cup of tea. Mm-hmm. And that's a very English saying, but because all I do is drink tea. But yeah, we have 90% of people out there, businesses, brands, whatever, won't want to work with us, but 10% absolutely love working with us. Mm-hmm. And that's because we do what we say we're going to do. We get them noticed. There's a value applied to our work. And so my advice would be, if anyone's hesitating, is are you prepared to not do it? There has to be some fear. You have to be afraid, of doing it. Otherwise, you're not doing it properly. If you immediately go, yeah, that's it, I'm done. I'm moving in this direction, and there's not a moment's hesitation, then it probably means that you're not moving far enough out. It means that you're probably still staying in the safe place.
Exactly.
That you talk about it. Yeah, you hear athletes talk about the butterflies before big sporting events. That's not because Usain Bolt before, maybe he's a bad example because he's the most chill guy in the world. I don't know, but you hear about athletes having butterflies before they go out on and perform different sporting events or whatever, or actors before they go on stage, things like that. You need those. They're the things that give you that fighting edge. And they're the things, I think, that tell you that you're onto something.
Exactly.
If you don't have them, then it means you haven't moved out of the safe space. of course it's a risk. I mean, we talk about take fucking risks. It should be risky. That's the whole point. If it's not, then you're not moved far enough away and you're just in the same space as everybody else. You're just on the edge. And if you're going to do that, you might as well not bother, because it's a lot of time and effort to do this. And if you're just going to move to the edge of the safe space, you're going to get no discernible benefit, and you're just going to, use a lot of your time.
Right. Yeah. I just want to pile on there that feeling that you're nervous to do something, to me, is the sign that you should do it. You should push your boundaries. And if you really think about it, so now this, for my listeners, we're not talking about Procter & Gamble. What's really the risk? They're already getting virtually no leads. Their website does practically nothing for them. What's the big deal of, changing all your headlines to say, we only work with credit unions, or just make some bold statement that's clear, concise. I like the word that you said before, raw. Whatever it is, whatever's consistent with your personality and your values and all of that. But that's true. Like, this pisses me off. Things shouldn't be like this, yada, yada, yada. And just kind of own your weirdness, whatever your weird, unique area is. What are you really risking? And the thing I get, everybody's like, oh, but I don't want my existing clients to see it. I'm like, your existing clients aren't going to your website.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's like, this is the stages I'm kind of trying to walk through in this whole conversation are like, how do I actually be different? How do I understand my own what's different about me? How do I get the courage to say it? And then, and then we talked a little bit about value pricing, but we're clearly 100% on the same page there. So,
yeah, the thing there is, there's a few tips and tricks. I fucking hate things like that. But anyway, that is, the first thing that a freelancer or a contractor or a small business is going to do, they're going to go and speak to their mates. Mm-hmm. They're going to go, hey, what do you think of this new logo, this new marketing positioning? That is, go and speak to their mum, and it's the worst thing you could possibly do. I have a thing about focus groups. I mean, our industry, or my industry, is it's completely fucking befuddled with market research and focus groups. And all that happens is a bunch of unemployed people go into a room, 20 of them, and and they'll be asked, do you prefer the logo in blue or red? Like, fuck off. Let these people, no, just take your $20 and your sandwich and piss off. Just do not use that kind of methodology to validate whether you should, say you come up with something, validate whether it's actually the right thing to do or not. Trust your gut. It's it's very easy. People seem to totally abandon this wonderful tool that we have, which, trusting your gut instinct. And they'd much rather devolve that power to people that know fuck all about what you should be doing, like your friends and family, or to complete strangers, or to some mythical algorithm data. Mm-hmm. It's complete rubbish. The best compass that you have is your gut.
I do think, and tell me if you disagree, but I do think that it's important to inform your gut, let's say, by talking to real potential customers, but probably in the product design stage, where you're like, am I actually solving a problem here? And I'm not talking about moonshots. I'm talking about stuff that's like, you're an expert at building Rails apps. You're thinking about putting together a browser plugin, some open source browser plugin. It's going to be a fair amount of work. And you're like, I kind of like it, but I don't know if anybody has this same problem I have. I would ask around and say, hey, people who would perhaps have this problem, do you actually have this problem? Or am I just like super on the edge, like an outlier, and I've got this weird problem that nobody else has? And you can tell right away if you just tweet and you're like, hey, does anybody wish there was a browser plugin that would make Trello go vertically instead of horizontally? Yeah. And if everyone's like, no, that's weird, why would anyone do that? Then I probably wouldn't spend my time on it. But if I got 800 likes, then I'd be like, oh, okay, maybe there's some interest. But I'm not talking about positioning at this point. I'm talking about like deciding, on a product.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not a massive fan of that kind of stuff. It does have a place. It does. Mm-hmm. I think you can only go off. I think the best thing to do is go off your own experience. If you have a problem with something, then chances are a load of other people do, unless you're, completely fucking mad, where, no other parts of your life fit into any other kind of commonly accepted patterns.
Right.
Then probably other people are going to have this same problem, and you should trust your gut. I mean, I don't want to use me as an example, but fuck it, I'm on the podcast, so I might as well. But we started as a side hustle an event series called Take Fucking Risks, and that came out of, we were all sat in the pub, so the people in the agency, the people that sit in my studio, sat in the pub, and we were talking, and I talk about taking fucking risks to clients, and have been for a long time. Mm-hmm. But I realized that I could only tell one client at a time, one meeting room, one boardroom at a time, to take risks, get noticed. And so we were like, well, why don't we just do an event in a pub and see how many people turn up, and we'll call it Take Fucking Risks, and we'll have someone speak, and we'll have a couple of beers. It probably won't work, but let's give it a go. And that was 2.5 years ago, and 50 people turned up. And yeah, they came along, and they heard a talk actually from a couple of American graphic designers called Good Fucking Design Advice, GFDA. They're amazing. You should go and get their posters, anybody, because it's an absolute rap sheet of what you should and shouldn't be doing. Anyway, I'll just plug those guys.
Cool.
But what transpired with our event is that we realized, wow, there's 50 people that we didn't know. We didn't know any of those 50 people. Right. I didn't invite my mum along to it, and they all validated in that one moment. And it took us, a month to organize from having the idea in the pub. And obviously we then put the event on in the same pub that we were in when we had the idea, because it felt like, serendipity. And 50 people turned up. We're like, wow, maybe we're onto something here. Let's do another one. And so we did an event for 150 people about 2 months later. Wow. And we sold out like within days. And we were, at that point, we were then charging people. So we're like, right, well, it's going to have to be £20 for a ticket. They get a beer, and they get to listen to me shoot my mouth off, and they get to listen to a speaker shoot his mouth off. And we sold out in days. We're like, shit, we're on something here. And before we knew it, we are now the biggest. This is a side hustle. This is a joke on the side of the business. Mm-hmm. We're now the biggest event series for the creative industry in London. We're bigger than all of the other people that put on events for the creative industry that do it for a living. We're bigger than all of those guys. We've got 450 people paying money to come along to our events once a quarter. Wow. I mean, I didn't put it on Twitter. I didn't validate it, with focus groups or anything like that. I just got off my arse and, took a risk by, it could have all fallen down and been a complete disaster. And the worst thing if it had been a complete disaster, would have been, all right, well, no one turned up. Well, we were going to have a few beers in the pub. That's fine.
It would have been worse if one person showed up.
Yeah. So that was my total risk. Yeah. Was one person who I didn't know would turn up and go, well, that was shit.
And and so let's emphasize that that's not you were not going to die. Like, this is not a serious risk, but it feels like it is.
Yeah.
Like, that's an important. I'm going to keep hammering on that, because the risk is really small. It's an ego thing.
Yeah.
There's probably, how much money would you have lost? Like, practically nothing, right?
We put, I don't know, 200, 300 pounds behind the bar.
Yeah, nothing.
My risk was, let's call it $500 maximum. Mm-hmm. Nothing really.
Yeah, nothing.
If you think about it. It was a risk to my own ego, to be, bruise my own ego. Right. It bruised my ego in front of the guys that are that work for me in the studio. Right. That would have been it. That doesn't seem like too big a risk to me. Right. And yet, at the back of it, 2.5 years later, we've now got an amazing event series that pulls in really big numbers.
Yeah, it's awesome. I love it. All right, folks, so take some risks. Jeez, what are you waiting for?
Come on, guys, take some fucking risks.
Yeah. So, but I do want to underscore one thing, because underlying all of this is, if you're differentiating yourself, you're making yourself famous for world-class, whatever it is that you do, if you turn around and then charge by the hour, you're just like throwing it all out the window.
Yeah.
So it's really important to, I mean, all of these things kind of, it's like this small, sort of concentric circles, like spiraling out from the center. That's how I see it anyway. Where I kind of do a little thing and try that and like, oh, that kind of worked. And then, so maybe I'm building my body of work. I'm building a software repo. I'm making it better. And people are forking it. I'm getting a lot of stars on GitHub. And, I'm also developing my point of view. I'm articulating it more and more clearly and, getting better clients, attracting better clients, being a little bit more confident in the sales cycle. And value pricing is, or at least some kind of fixed pricing where you're figuring out a way to justify premium rates, is going to give you more confidence. It's going to help you. It actually helps you deliver better results because you have more latitude within the budget to deliver something that's super effective. And you just keep working around in that circle as the business. I see it as growing the business in like this spiraling kind of motion. It's less linear feeling.
Yeah, I also think, if you're really good, you should be valued as such. And, all of these things are some of their parts. Mm-hmm. You can't just do one of these things. You have to do all of these things, I think. Now that sounds scary. And, you don't have to do them all at the same time. It can be a journey that you go on, but you have to set yourself some goals, to do it in a certain amount of time. But yeah, the hardest part is starting, I would say.
Yeah, I agree. I talk to a lot of people that are like, well, they don't know what's different about them. They don't, well, what project should I start? Like, I would love to do an open source project, but what should it be? And it does kind of boil down to it. I'll be coaching someone and they'll be like that. And I'm like, look, at the end of the day, it's kind of like follow your gut. Like, what one do you want to do?
Yeah. I mean, we started, again, just as another little example. So we use Slack internally within the studio. And because we're English, we drink lots of tea. Actually, some of these fuckers, they drink coffee now, which always gets on my goat. But we could never decide who was going to get off their ass and go and make the round of drinks. Mm-hmm. So we developed a little randomizer app that we just, from our own internal thing, we didn't validate it with anybody. We didn't say, oh, hey, let's let's go out and do a focus group to see if other businesses argue about who's going to make the next round of teas or coffees from the kitchen. We just made a little randomizer app and then put it on the Slack app store. Mm-hmm. And it's now been downloaded by I think we've got something like over 200,000 users. It's mad. It's just a free little thing, but we just did it, and now 200,000 people know that we had a problem deciding who was going to make a cup of tea. Yeah. I mean, it's mad. I mean, it doesn't have to be something huge. It doesn't have to be something, And if we were serious about that, we'd market the hell out of it, and we'd use it as a way of showing how clean our code is, how great our updates are, how much we, understand Python, whatever the hell it is,
Yeah, that's a good example.
So that's Risky Picker in the Slack app store.
Nice. And again, though, I'm guessing that was a very low overhead for you to do that. Right. So it's not I'm totally I'm 100% anti-focus groups. Like you say, I would kind of say, well, what you did was validate the idea with a very low investment.
Yes. But
you did it by actually shipping. So
yes.
I think that's great. Great.
Yeah. I mean, we have a saying in the UK, either take a shit or get off the toilet. And that's, it's that do something. Don't just sit there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. You're going to die on the pot deciding which hand to wipe with.
Yeah. Anyway, we digress.
Yeah, that might be a good place to wrap it up. So, Paul, thanks so much for joining me today. Where can people go to find out more about you?
Well, there's a couple of places. So I'm on LinkedIn. I think if you just search Paul Mellor, you'll see me. I'm wearing some pink overalls with a blue background as my profile picture. I post on LinkedIn quite a lot. I don't go in for any other kind of social media. You can go on to the agency itself, Mellor & Smith, has Twitter and Instagram and whatever. So you can go on to @Mellor&Smith, or you can go to mellorandsmith.com. And then we do actually have 2 events coming up for our Take Fucking Risks event series. So the first one is a pub crawl, and it's on the 25th of September. It's in London. It's I think it's 50 quid a ticket, and you get 5 pubs, 5 drinks, 5 speakers. So that's pretty good value. That's on the 25th of September in Borough Market in London. And then the second event is the 13th of November. The speakers for that haven't been announced. Tickets go on sale soon. And that's, again, in and around Borough Market in London. And that'll be one of the big events. That'll be a 450 person event. Some of the people we're speaking to at the moment for the speakers, I mean, they're just about finalized, but I'm really excited. But the speakers for the 25th of September have been announced. We've got some great speakers. So if you go to tfr.events, you can pick up tickets.
Excellent. Fabulous. I wish I was going to be over there that way. Maybe in the future. Sounds like a blast.
Yeah. Drinking and learning, it like together are 2 of my favorite things.
Can't beat it. All right, folks, that's it for this week. I'm Jonathan Stark, and I hope you join us again next time on Ditching Hourly. See ya. Hey, Jonathan again. The next time someone asks for your hourly rate, I want you to stop what you're doing and go to valuepricingbootcamp.com to sign up for my free value pricing email course. That URL again is valuepricingbootcamp.com. Hope to see you there.